everyone, this is ReeferGil. In this video I'll be going over how I do my water changes. I've seen some pretty creative and innovative ways of how other people do water changes. However, my method is neither creative or innovative, but nonetheless it's the way I do my water changes. I do about a 10% water change every week, and the reason we want to do water changes is because it prevents the buildup of nitrates in your system. It replenishes your system with both minor and major trace elements through the salt mix that we use. And it's also an opportunity to remove the nutrients that will feed nuisance algae that can build up in our system. With that said, there is also another theory that is pretty much practiced by advanced reefers, and that theory is not to do water changes at all. It is believed that they work very hard to get the water parameters to where they want them, and then adding freshly mixed salt water into their system would throw off those water parameters. So instead what they do is they don't do water changes at all. They dose the system with both minor and major trace elements. They're running the proper equipment. It gets really technical, or can get pretty technical. So that method is reserved for more advanced reefers. If you're just getting into the hobby, I would highly recommend that you stick to a regular scheduled water change regimen. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we're down in my garage. This is my water making station. You could see the RODI unit up on the right corner here. The two buckets are brute containers. I think they are about 33 gallons. One has the salt water, one has the fresh water. You see my salt mix here, the salinity by Aquavitro, and then over here I have my containers for transporting the either fresh water or salt water up and down the stairs. So I'll go ahead and get started and show you how I go about filling these containers with salt water. Okay, we have a bird's eye view of the top of my saltwater bin container. You can see a 3/4 inch hose here, which goes down to a Rio 2500 pump. So that's what I use to pump out this water. I'll put the other end of the hose into one of my buckets, and then go ahead and plug in the Rio to fill up the bucket here. Okay, today I'm going to do about a 10-gallon water change. So this one's about to get filled up here already. Unplug it up a little bit and move it to the next one and fill up the second container here. These are both 5-gallon jugs. So we'll go ahead and wait for this one to fill up, and then we'll go back upstairs and show you how I drain the water. One very important step that I have done but I didn't mention in the video is checking the salinity of the water prior to it going into your display tank. So prior to the salt mixed water going into your display tank, make sure that the salinity is exactly where you want it. And I would highly recommend using a refractometer like this one here versus one of the hydrometers with the swinging arm. These are just a lot more precise and accurate than the others. Now we can go back upstairs. So before we get started doing the water change or any kind of maintenance to your tank where water might spill onto the floor, take the extra time. It takes a few seconds to lay down a towel over your hardwood floors or over your carpet. Keeping your parents or your spouse happy is going to make your experience with this hobby a lot more enjoyable. So let's just take that extra time to lay down that towel. Okay, this is probably one of the most common ways to drain a system. It's a siphon effect. Basically, you put the end of the siphon, you can see it in the tank right here. The hose goes down into your receptacle. In my case, it's this orange receptacle. You take this end of the line, you put it in your mouth, you suck on it. You'll start seeing the water come down. You can put the drain line back in your receptacle, and then the water will start slowly draining out of your display tank into the receptacle. You have to monitor this to ensure that this receptacle doesn't start to overflow. This is the method I was using for a very long time, for a few months anyway. You could see on the bucket I marked the gallons, how many gallons were coming out, so I knew how many gallons to put back in. Remarkably, it doesn't matter if I take out exactly 5 gallons. When I try to put exactly 5 gallons back in, it always seems like it's off, like the measurement's off, and I need to put an extra gallon in of water, and I never know where that extra gallon had gone. But it's one of those mysterious things about the hobby that I just don't know, and I don't know if I'll ever figure it out. For this to work, obviously your water source where you're removing the water from has to be higher than what your receptacle's at. So in this case, the display tank is obviously higher than the receptacle, so we won't have an issue there. The second thing you need is to suck on this end of the line for it to work. This method works great. It's a cheap way to do it. Just takes a little bit longer, and I'll show you what I've started doing since then to make it more efficient and a little bit quicker water changes. Now the drawback for me in the way I have things set up here of using a gravity-fed siphon is that when I want to clean out the sump of its detritus or sand, it won't work with this gravity-fed siphon because, as you can see, the receptacle is level with the water source. So because the water source isn't higher than the receptacle, I'm not going to be able to get a siphon. Thus, I will not be able to vacuum out the detritus and sand that gets into the third and first stage of my sump. So that is one of the main reasons why I stopped using the siphon and purchased the siphon I'm about to show you. Okay, I purchased this siphon from Pet Club or PetSmart, one of those places. I think it was like 30 bucks. I remember it wasn't cheap, but it's well worth it. The hose itself is very long, and in my case I can reach it outside to where I would normally connect my water hose at. Disconnect the water hose and connect it with this end here of the siphon hose, and then obviously this end of the siphon hose will go into the display tank. I crank on the faucet at full blast, and what that does is it'll then suck air through here and out through the nozzle there. And what you end up getting is a more efficient way of removing water from your system. Because you don't know how much water is coming out, like the other way where I placed it in a bucket, I had it marked with 5 gallons, so I knew how many gallons were coming out, and I had an idea how many gallons to put back in the tank. In this case, you can't do that. So what I've done to compensate is I marked the side of the tank here. You can kind of see it, but I put 5 gallons, 10 gallons, and then you can figure about 15 gallons is right here if I ever do a 15-gallon change, which I do on occasion. But so I'll turn it on, I'll come back in here and watch the level drop, and once it gets to 10, I'll go ahead, or gets close to 10, I'll go outside and shut off the water. Okay, I'm going to walk you outside to where I've connected this other end of the hose. You'll hear some music in the background. I apologize. Those are my neighbors jamming to their sounds. But here's where I connected it, and what we do now is I turn on this faucet at full blast. Come back in here. And listen to the suction of this thing. It's like a vacuum cleaner. So I'll sit here and watch and make sure none of the fish get close to the siphon area. I'd hate to have one of them get sucked in there, but I'll watch that. And now I'm watching the water level drop here. You kind of get an idea of how fast this thing's sucking water out. And the other nice thing about doing it this way then versus doing it with the gravity-fed siphon is, remember the orange bucket that was sitting here, the receptacle? I don't need it. So it's one extra thing I don't have to bring up with me. So we'll go ahead and let this thing siphon out 10 gallons, and then we'll replace it with 10 gallons. Okay, I wanted to let you guys know that there is an adapter that comes with this unit. The adapter would screw in here where you would normally screw in the garden hose faucet, and then the other end of the adapter would screw in your water faucet. You would take off the aerator to your water faucet and then replace it with this, screw it on there, turn on the water, and it works much in the same way. The only thing is, obviously you get more water pressure out of your garden hose, thus you'll get more water coming out of the display tank at a faster rate. But nonetheless, if you live in an apartment or you live in a condo or your hose isn't long enough to reach your garden hose area, then you have this alternative. Okay, you can see the water level now that I've taken out almost 10 gallons of water. We'll go over to where I marked the gallons. And here's 5 gallons and here's 10 gallons, and the water line is just short of coming down to the 10 gallons. Reason I did that is because I brought 2 5-gallon water jugs and I have exactly 10 gallons, so I want to make sure I have enough water here with me upstairs to prevent me from going downstairs and grabbing another gallon of water and making that extra trip. So I'll go ahead and fill up that tank. When I start emptying out the 5-gallon jugs of water into the system, I want to do it as delicately as possible so not to disturb the inhabitants of the system and stress them out or knock over my corals and stuff like that. So I'll show you with a demonstration of how I fill up the system using one of the 5-gallon jugs. So little by little, try not to spill all over the floor. And at the same time, I'm watching the water, making sure it doesn't come into contact with my Vega lights, because that would be a bad day there if I got those things wet. Okay, the system's filled up with 10 gallons of fresh salt water. This will also be the time where I check the GFO, the carbon, and change out the filter socks. In a couple of days, I'll also check the water parameters to ensure the alkalinity, magnesium, and calcium are up to par. This will conclude my video, guys. Please don't forget to comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.